Introduction to Nationalism in India. Hello everyone. Before starting the lesson, let me ask you a few questions. How do wars start? Why do wars occur and reoccur? Is war really needed? Everyone has a different answer to these questions. To be precise, our history has been filled with wars. Some wars took place on a small level, while the others took a decade to get over. The ultimate reason for war in olden days is people's loyalty and patriotism towards their nation-state. Over the years, many people described war as a violent behavior of people, which is pointless, unethical and inhuman. Anyway, wars can sometimes be considered necessary and unavoidable. Now, let's start our lesson to know how nationalism started in India. Earlier, nationalism in Europe was started by forming nation-states and changed people's perception of their own identity. Each community has its new symbols, songs, and ideas that define its boundaries and national identity. In India, the thought of national identity came in when the anti-colonial movement and nationalism were interconnected. People started finding their unity when they started struggling with colonialism. Colonialism also made people oppress, which created a bond among the people. But each class and group felt the effects of colonialism in a different way. Mahatma Gandhi tried to create a single movement, which was not possible without a conflict. Now, in this chapter, let's learn the non-cooperation and civil disobedience movements. So, at the end of this lesson, you will be able to discuss the effects of First World War, explain the various Satyagraha movements, explain the Rowlatt Act, describe the Jallianwalla Bagh incident, discuss the non-cooperation and civil disobedience movements. Effects of the First World War, Satyagraha movement and Rowlatt Act. First, let's discuss the effects of the First World War. After 1919, India saw many national movements spreading through new areas and new social groups, thus creating more struggles. The effects of war include the creation of a new economic situation, where defense expenditure increased and was funded through war loans and taxes. Income tax was introduced, and custom duties were raised. Due to war, prices started doubling between the years 1913 and 1918, that left common people in trouble. In rural areas, people were forced to join the army, which made them angry. During 1918 and 1921, crops were broken down, leading to a shortage of food, followed by an influenza epidemic. According to the census of 1921, 12 to 13 million people lost their life due to famine and epidemic. Even after the war, people's trouble did not end, and at this stage, a new leader Mahatma Gandhi emerged, with a new way of struggle. Next, let's discuss the Satyagraha movement. Mahatma Gandhi came from South Africa in January 1915. In South Africa, he successfully fought against the anti-democratic government, with a novel method of mass agitation, which is termed as Satyagraha. The idea of Satyagraha stressed the concept of truth. It also indicated physical fights are not needed when the cause of the struggle is true and fair. According to Gandhiji, a Satyagrahi can win the battle through non-violence, without any form of revenge. Without forcing, each and every people were made to see the truth, and finally, the truth wins. Mahatma Gandhi believed that non-violence would unite all Indians. After reaching India, Mahatma Gandhi arranged Satyagraha movements in many places. During 1916, he started traveling to Champaran in Bihar and influenced peasants to fight against the harsh plantation system. Next, in 1917, he arranged a Satyagraha in Khera district of Gujarat to support the farmers. Crops did not yield sufficient food, and there was a plague outbreak in Khera, so farmers requested to relax the revenue collection. Next, in 1918, Mahatma Gandhi went to Ahmedabad for a Satyagraha movement among the cotton mill workers. Now, let's learn about the Rowlatt Act. The Rowlatt Act was passed through the Imperial Legislative Council, despite the Indian members' opposition. The act gave more powers to the government to put an end to political activities. Political prisoners were not allowed to investigate for 2 years. Mahatma Gandhi found this totally unfair and started a protest on 6 April 1919. In 1919, Gandhiji decided to start a Satyagraha movement against the Rowlatt Act. In many cities, rallies were arranged, workers were on strike, and shops were closed. The British administration was scared of the strikes by railway workers and decided to put an end to nationalists. Local leaders were arrested, and Mahatma Gandhi was not allowed to enter Delhi. On 10 April, the Amritsar police fired a procession, which caused further attacks on banks, post offices and railway stations. Martial law of direct military control was enforced, and General Dyer took command. The Jallianwalla Bagh incident, Khilafat movement and non-cooperation movement. Now, let's discuss the Jallianwalla Bagh incident. The well-known Jallianwalla Bagh incident took place on 13 April, where a large crowd gathered in the ground of Jallianwalla Bagh. On the same day, Baisakhi was celebrated in Punjab. Some people came to protest, while others came to participate in the annual Baisakhi fair. Many villagers were not aware of the martial law, which was imposed in Amritsar. General Dyer, who entered the area, blocked all the exit points and started shooting the crowd, killing hundreds of people. Later he announced that the shooting was to create fear among the Satyagrahis. The Jallianwalla Bagh incident was soon spread, and the crowd started running into the streets of North Indian towns. There were strikes, clashes, attacks on government buildings, and the government was very cruel in its action. Satyagrahis were forced to rub their noses on the roads, was made to crawl on the streets, and to salute all police. Many people were beaten, and many villages were bombed. Soon, Mahatma Gandhi called off the movement. Next, let us discuss the Khilafat movement. Rowlatt Act was restricted to a few cities and towns. Mahatma Gandhi wanted to start many movements across India, but he also knew that it was possible only when Hindus and Muslims were united. So, he decided to take up the Khilafat issue. Ottoman Turkey was defeated in the First World War. There was a widespread rumor about the harsh treaty on the Ottoman Emperor, who was the head of the Islamic world, the Khalifa. To protect the Khalifa's powers, a Khilafat committee was formed in Bombay in March 1919. Many young Muslim leaders like Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali started discussing with Mahatma Gandhi on the actions to be taken. Gandhiji took this opportunity to include Muslims under the unified national movement. He convinced other leaders to start a non-cooperation movement in support of Khilafat and Swaraj. At the Calcutta session of the Congress, on September 1920, a resolution was passed to start a non-cooperation movement. Next, let us discuss the non-cooperation movement. Mahatma Gandhi, in his book, Hind Swaraj, in 1909, mentioned about the cooperation of Indians that made British rule India. If Indians did not cooperate, the British rule would have fallen, and Swaraj would have emerged. The non-cooperation movement took place in many stages, like surrendering of titles that were given by the government, followed by a ban on civil services, army, police, courts and legislative councils, schools, and foreign goods. Finally, if the government had forced people, a full disobedience campaign would have begun. Throughout the year 1920, Mahatma Gandhi and Shaukat Ali gathered more support for the movement. Congress refused to avoid the elections in November 1920, and worried about the Khilafat movement, which might lead to violence. Later there were huge fights within the Congress, and there was no common focus between the supporters and the opponents of the movement. In the end, the Congress session at Nagpur in December 1920 formed the non-cooperation movement. Conclusion. To conclude, the anger among the people against the British rule brought together various groups of Indians into a common freedom struggle. The Congress, under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, did many non-violent protests to gain complete independence. In the next lesson, let's see how different social groups conceive the idea of non-cooperation. Summary. Before we wind up, let's summarize what we have learnt in this session. Gandhiji's Satyagraha movements were arranged in many places like Champaran in Bihar, Khera district of Gujarat, and for Ahmedabad cotton mill workers. Mahatma Gandhi decided to start a Satyagraha movement against Rowlatt Act by arranging rallies, workers' strike and closing shops. General Dyer killed hundreds of people in the Jallianwalla Bagh incident to create fear among the Satyagrahis. Khilafat movement was an opportunity to include Muslims under the unified national movement